All right, so welcome to our professional quest with Bear International. I'm Kelly Coughlan. I am the Senior Career Manager here. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because I am the granddaughter of an entrepreneur, I am the daughter of an entrepreneur, and I am the spouse of an entrepreneur. So very familiar with some of the ins and outs and the trials and tribulations that come from entrepreneurship, but also the rewards. And so I'm looking forward to chatting with Mike here about more in depth what that involves. And I'm going to turn things over to Lynn, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Linh Nguyen. I'm currently a project manager intern with the Costello College of Business. Here we do pretty much all sorts type of things. We help you with your resumes, we do workshop, cover letters, anything you can name of in your professional career. So I am not the daughter or the granddaughter of any entrepreneurs, but I do very much look up to entrepreneurship, and I think that's definitely something that everybody should look up to just in case you ever wanted to make your own business. So I'm going to turn things over to Mike now.
Hello and good day. My name is Mike Bear. I'm the co-owner of Bear International, a business that I started with my wife 38 years ago. And I'm going to share a little bit of my journey through life that allowed me to get to the point of making that decision to go in that direction. Hopefully this information is helpful to you. Obviously, I'm aware that there's decades differential from where I'm at to where you're at this point in time. But hopefully some of the things that I share with you conceptually will apply in terms of how it applies to you. I'll start off by saying first and foremost that we're a product of our environment, how we grew up, who we grew up with, and that sort of thing. I was an only child. Obviously, if you have siblings, it's a different relationship that fosters over time. But as a single child, I had older parents. They were both older when I was born, and they worked. They were workaholics, quite honestly. My father had been in the military. My mother had always been in an environment where her parents worked, etc. So I was always exposed to hard work. That's what you did. It's just the way life was back then in the 60s and 70s. My parents had a hardware store at some point in time. I think mine was about 10 to 14. And that was an amazing experience for me in terms of exposure of seeing what was involved in opening a business and what was involved in maintaining it. During that time, I was what's called the latchkey kid. So I was kind of responsible for myself. I went to their hardware store quite a lot, but due to some challenges, I ended up going to a military school for 4 years. I think the most significant thing that I came away with from that was discipline. You need to have discipline to be successful. So when you're responsible for yourself, you've got no other option but to make sure you do the things that are going to give you a vision for success. After military school, I went to college for 2 years at Old Dominion University in Norfolk. During that time, I worked because I was out of the house at that point. I had an apartment. I had to earn money. I was earning good money as far as different roles in different department stores. And then I transitioned to working in the restaurant business. The restaurant business appealed to me in many different ways because I'm a person who can't sit still. Different profiles of different people are key in terms of who they are, what they become, and what their career is. People who work in an accounting or finance role, they're dedicated to sitting at a computer or working books and that sort of thing, and that's fine, and that's critical to any business. I can assure you our CFO is priceless. But there are those that are operationally oriented, that constantly need to move around, that need to evolve, that need to be involved in multitudes of different things. And for me, the restaurant business was the perfect median as far as that's concerned. Always fast paced, always something going on, multitudes of responsibilities. Again, some people are happy with repetitive tasks. That's not the case. One of the first things that I did after my first stint in the restaurant business was decide to open salad bar restaurants in Northern Virginia. At that point in time, a salad was not considered a meal. If I wanted to serve beer and wine, I had to serve meals. I actually went to the state legislature in the state of Virginia and contested the fact that a salad wasn't a meal. My point in sharing this story is just because something is a certain way does not necessarily mean that you need to accept that. And as long as you have credibility in challenging what some people think is correct, doesn't mean that it has to stay that way forever. So I started my first business with some money that I had actually won in gaming. And I bought a lot of equipment for this restaurant, but I didn't have a location. I started telling people I bought this equipment. I've looking for places. And when you tell people, you commit to something. You know, if you keep it in the back of your mind that says that you're going to do this, but you don't tell anybody or you don't take any steps to move forward, it's never going to happen. You either lose face or you push forward. So as a result of this, I found a location. I opened my first location. Over 3 years, I had 3 different locations of my salad bar restaurants, but I had hoped that by then I would have 10, 15, or 20. In my mind, it was a failure. I think the only good thing that came out of that was I met my wife. So I got married early 80s. I go back to the corporate world again, and I'm working for a regional chain. While I'm working there for this regional Mexican restaurant chain, I learned that there's activities that they've incorporated into their business. They're the first business to use what are called mystery shoppers or mystery customers to visit their locations. They were based in Louisville, Kentucky. KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, was the first chain to use quality service cleanliness standards. That was mystery shopping. That was the beginning of this industry. Chi-Chi's was the first full service restaurant to do this. But the way they did it, again, to my point of something doesn't make sense, ask questions and challenge the norm, they used the same people over and over again. They wanted to use these tactics to fire and terminate people rather than to make people better or positive. I questioned what they did and why they did it. They told me it was none of my business. And why did I care? Because we always got the best scores. I told them we had the best scores because the way they did it, we knew who the people were. And they said, maybe you should start your own business. And I did. That's exactly what I did. I had joined the restaurant association. I knew many people in the restaurant association. Being involved in industry associations is really key to your success if you care to make whatever that business line is, your career. You've got to know other people who you can look up to. You got to know other people who you think, wow, I can't believe these people are successful at the level that I perceive them to be. If they can be successful, I know they can be. And then, as I alluded to, you've got the others that you definitively look up to as far as their career is concerned. The other component of this was that working for others was always a challenge for me. Again, as I said, I'm a make things happen type of person. You control your own destiny. One of the places that I worked at this last Mexican restaurant group, I had actually told my regional vice president that I was really looking forward to doing a great job, and I looked forward to taking his position one day. He felt that as a threat rather than feeling good about my initiative. So right away there was issues. Again, it reinforced my desire to create my own responsibility, destiny, and direction. So with $10 for some business cards and a used typewriter that my wife had, we started our business in our basement. Because I knew people in the restaurant association locally, I went to them and proposed this new strategy for the mystery shopping business. And within 4 years, we had 9 employees in our basement. Yeah, it was a little tight. And we had clients throughout the United States. Our 5-year plan was to maybe have clients within 3 states. Within those first 5 years, we had clients in over 30 states. So our business grew significantly. One of the initiatives that I took to allow it to grow was I found a group, an association of hospitality controllers, the finance people who paid the bills, who approved the budgets for businesses as far as restaurants and hotels. and I began to speak at their circuit around the United States. So they paid for my lodging, they paid for my travel. I got to be in front of an audience of these people who were interested in our business offering, and it only allowed our business to grow. So that was how it began. If you don't have an idea, if you don't have an initiative, it's difficult to do this. You've got to have a vision. You got to have steps that you begin to take. You got to have goals. You got to have focus to grow this. So I'm thinking your next question is going to be, because you were kind enough to give me a list, some of the biggest challenges, starting with limited capital to build out your business. That's a challenge. If you have a home, you have to take the risk of being willing to mortgage it if you believe that much in your business, or perhaps you have friends or other people who can contribute to your startup, depending on what it is. You've got to start your business in a small basis and build it out. You've got to validate doing what you do well to get started. And originally, we only started in doing this type of mystery visit within restaurants, and then we began with hotels. We began to get our clients involved in helping us build a better program. There were our end users. We had to get their input to be successful. As we began to grow this further and further, we began to include spas, golf courses, resorts, and other components of business that were all related to hospitality. Our company name was Restaurant and Hotel Services, and that was our basis. We stayed disciplined, we stayed focused, but we needed to evolve our business further. In the late 90s, all of the Hilton hotels throughout the United States were our client. They had properties over in Europe with the Conrad Hotel Group. They asked me to go over there and visit their properties. That was my first experience to going international. Now, during this time, of course, as I said, we began to add staff. We started our business in 87. We moved into an office around 1993, 94. We were fortunate in the building we were in. We were continuing able to take over space as we needed it to grow our staff. Probably by this time, we had 40 people working for us. I think one of the key things I want to really reinforce to you folks at this point in time above anything else is you've got to identify the right people to support you. This is so key to this day. You're only as good as your people. You cannot do everything yourself. You've got to learn to trust with guardrails. After a certain time, those guardrails come off. But you've got to empower people instead of telling people. You ask, you don't direct, you respect their input. And most importantly, you, along with them, need to establish goals to show them the vision of the opportunities in terms of the business that they're involved in. Again, this is your business that you've created. You've got these people who begin to look for you for their income, for their salary to feed their families, and they also look to you for direction. So by your setting goals for yourself, sharing those goals with your employees, and getting them involved and beginning to set goals that also benefit them and your company, that's key as far as things are concerned. I want to share one other scenario in terms of validating yourself. In 1997, another gentleman and I went to Amsterdam. There was an association called ISAMAR, which was the standard as far as market research, which is what mystery shopping was considered at that time. Within their guidelines, they basically said that mystery shopping was subjective and not very credible. So we went to position ourselves as to the fact that this was a significant industry. We were doing a couple $1 million at that point in time in business within our first 10 years of business. And we were viable, we were credible, we were not subjective. We were objective in terms of our documentation. And basically, they told us to leave. So we left, and then we decided how to build and create our own association, which today is called the Mystery Shopping Providers Association, which is a global association at this point. It started in North America when this other gentleman who also owned a business in Atlanta and myself came together. We thought maybe we would get 10 or 12 companies to attend this first preliminary seminar that we created in regards to our industry. We had over 70 people in attendance, far beyond our expectation, but it really told us that we were onto something here. So by us being leaders, by us credentializing our industry, it gave us the credentials that we needed to move forward in continuing to grow the credibility of our industry, as well as myself, my wife, and our partner being that co-founder and the credentializer of what our industry was about. Significant point here is if you're going to do something, make a full commitment to it and make a reputation for yourself in terms of who you are and what you're doing. So
Can I
there's
back up
definitely risks.
I want to inject one thing because I know that I'm sure we have some folks on the call who are not familiar with what mystery shopping is. Can you give a quick overview? I know you, like you said, it's kind of started as considered market research, which it sort of is, but what does it involve? And kind of just do a quick overview of what mystery shopping is.
Right. The primary concept is that we go in and objectively document the occurrence. If we go into a bank, if we go into a car dealership, if we go into a restaurant, if we check into a hotel, we go to buy a new cell phone, any and all those businesses use mystery shoppers to validate the customer experience. This is not a review that's posted on LinkedIn or Trustpilot or any of those other things. This is for the company to validate that time standards are being met. There was just something published recently about how quickly it took to get food ordered at drive-throughs. That was just published a few days ago. Those are the type of things we do. How long did it take to open that bank account? Was there a genuine interaction in terms of their interest in the car I was wanting to buy? Or were they simply there to ask me a few questions and point me in the right direction? So we are there to objectively document the customer service experience. We're also there to validate certain people. You know, how interactive are they? If you go to buy a $10,000 Rolex, is the person there to build a relationship with you so you feel comfortable in spending that kind of money in that type of luxury brand store? Or is it superficial? Yeah, you don't look the part of somebody who could buy that. There's a very famous story about Sam Walton who went in to go buy a vehicle, and because he came in blue jeans and overalls, they really didn't respect his credibility in terms of being able to make a purchase and basically ignored him. That's how Walmart got started. So mystery shopping is the validation of the consumer experience. It's evolved now into pricing audits and brand standards inspections, self-audits, and other components of our business. Our website, www.bearinternational, would give you a very good detailed overview if you're interested in learning more about the details. In the US, there's probably about 50 companies that do this. In the Asia Pacific, in Asia, there's about 80 primary companies. And in the European market, there's over 200 companies that provide these services around the world.
And I think in our earlier conversations too, you had mentioned, we can talk about, I'd love to hear what was the speed. You mentioned, you know, by, what was it, the late 80s or early 90s, you were up to 40 employees after starting with several crowded in your basement. Interested in how fast did it grow? And I know that you guys are currently global, correct?
That's correct. We have offices in 13 countries, physical offices, and we do work in 178 countries around the world.
That's incredible.
We have about 297 employees, about 150 independent contractors. Independent contractors are scenarios where, because somebody is based in Kazakhstan, you know, I don't have an office in Kazakhstan, so it's difficult to employ them. So we hire them as an independent contractor or consultant.
I did also have a quick question. So, hearing about your entire journey, I really wonder, how do you keep on the motivation, especially when you first started this company, and especially when you're first, going to back to the restaurant, giving out all these business cards and pitching your idea. How do you get through that and just like what advice would you give us if we were to start our first startup now?
You know, so first and foremost, you've got to have confidence in yourself. Although I'll be very honest, during my first agreement signing, I remember the sweat pouring off my head as I sat under the lamp looking at the agreement that I had typed up with typos and things like that. That wasn't my forte. So the point is, you've got to have confidence in terms of who you are and what you're doing. You've got to have discipline. I certainly mentioned goals. I can't stress that enough. You've got to be organized, and you've got to have respect for your client and the opportunity that they're willing to provide to you in terms of um, giving you that opportunity. I want to share one thing that I kind of live by is that if a business is going to excel, they need two things. They need loyal employees and loyal customers. Loyal employees equal loyal customers. And that's why we mystery shop, to see if the employees care about their work environment. Is there trash on the floor and they kick it aside, or there boxes all over the place that nobody's bothered to put away? You know, is that the kind of environment that a person wants to shop in? Sometimes it's fine, sometimes it's not, depending on the environment. So loyal employees, you see that at Costco, equal loyal customers. Your loyal employees are your most valuable asset. They are your competitive advantage, but it's really about the client benefits that you want to provide. You know, and this is important. When a client asks us, and we're up against competition for a bid to win a contract, they say, well, why should I use your company? And every company is going to say, oh, we have the best employees, we have the best software, we have the best reputation. That's not what we say. It's not about us, it's about you. It's about making your job easier. It's about ensuring the profitability of your company grows as a result of the expenditure of our services to your company. And it's about the satisfaction of your customers. And that's a real game changer when you reposition the conversation to not being about us, but about them. So we've got a pretty significant closure rate with that particular close. But I digress. My point is that your employees are your best brand ambassadors. Your brand position is determined by your customer experience, and the experience delivered by your frontline employees is a make or break scenario. By the same token, as it relates to restaurants, if you don't have the back of the house employees, as an example, they're just as critical. It's not always only the frontline employees. They can be the best in the world, but if you're waiting an hour for your food to come out because they don't have clean dishes, they don't have enough cook staff or prep staff, it doesn't matter how exceptional the front of the house are. You know, employees just want to be in a healthy environment that treats them fairly and fosters their growth and well-being. And that's really important to us. And to your question, Lynn, you know, HR is critical to the success of any business. My wife was certainly the people person within our business. I was the driver of the operations, having people who have specific skills. No one person can be everything to everybody. Maybe unless you're Elon Musk, obviously we see that doesn't work. But my point is that it's really necessary that you get others involved and be a part of who you are and what you do. In our company today, we lead through consensus. So it's not me sitting in a chair making determinations of what we do. Quite honestly, as a CEO, I'm fairly well removed many years over in terms of the reality of some of the processes and software that we have. It's the people who work day to day in terms of these tasks who we get involved in the determinations of our next software development initiative, or what changes do we make in terms of establishing video guidelines rather than written guidelines. So it's your field people who need to have the input. And when you do that, they respect the decisions that you made because, and here's my point, the decisions within our business environment are made by consensus. It's not me saying this, it's having each employee have the opportunity to share their thoughts and ideas as to what may work and what may not. And then we collectively validate those different positions that they've taken, and then we collectively agree and we look for consensus. I think that's probably one of the most significant things in building your business. Get employees involved in the direction of your business.
Mike, I'm going to go off on a tangent just for a second in terms of business startup. It sounded like you had some funds put together to launch. I know we had talked about the story of starting with basically like $11 or something in your in your basement and kind of launching this. I know that obviously people can go different routes with SBA loans, putting together a business plan. What is your advice for kind of how to just get things started? Maybe, people don't have stuff saved up. They don't have enough to launch. I know that the route that my father and grandfather went was, they built up enough money to launch their own business. My husband ended up buying into an existing franchise. So what are your thoughts on kind of the funding side of it?
Yeah, you got to know what you're investing in. You got to know the components that you need depending on the type of business that you're going to create. If you're going to start a plumbing business, you're going to need vehicles. Do you go out and buy a fancy new Mercedes van, or do you start with a used Ford, pickup? You got to take steps that are achievable, and the faster you get to that, the better off that you are. So use logic and common sense. I read often about other people in terms of what they do with their money, how they utilize their money, how they reinvest. Um, so prudence in not going overboard right away. Sure, we always want the best and most significant. After we closed up our offices during COVID and moved to a significantly smaller space here in Northern Virginia, at the time, we had an awful lot of equipment. Things were moving to the cloud. So we gave away, not sold, we gave away an awful lot of computer servers and equipment. And it was great to see or hear the different stories. Everybody wanted this stuff, but it was really taking the time to listen to different entrepreneurs who had different visions and ideas for how they were going to use this. It was inspiring for me. At least I felt good about giving something away rather than trying to get a few dollars for it. It's you got to find resources that accommodate what you're able to afford and going out there to make something happen. There's no question that it's not more difficult today than it ever was, but by the same token, there are greater opportunities in terms of technology and software, depending on the nature of business that you start. Again, I grew up in the day of Bill Gates building computers in his garage, or Steve Jobs, that type of thing. Back to your point about how much money do you spend to get things happen? Warren Buffett still lives in his house from 50 years ago. And he doesn't drive a brand new Maybach, I can assure you that. So my point is that you got to live within your means based on what you're doing. You need to be willing to make sacrifices. I can assure you, during most of my career, I never worked a 40-hour work week. You work 40 hours a week to keep up, just to keep up. It's what you do after that 40 hours and how effectively you use that time after those 40 hours that really is that transitional factor in terms of your trajectory and moving forward.
Perfect. Well, I want to pause there and have time for questions. So first of all, thanks for joining us, everybody. I know that some of you probably have some questions you want to pop in the chat or unmute yourself and ask, which is totally fine. So I am going to go ahead and actually pause our recording so that you can ask questions freely and not have to worry about it being recorded. So let me pause right there. All right. Well, that is the end of our questions. Mike, I cannot tell you how much we appreciate your time and popping in here today. Again, thanks to all of you who attended and posed intelligent questions, and we will be following up with you via email. This will be going on our YouTube page, and so once that recording is ready, we'll send it out. Mike, you're going to send us a great list of books that we will be sure to distribute to those who are interested. And again, just thanks for coming in, and we hope to do this again.
My pleasure. Take care. Be
All right.
well. Bye.
Take care.